Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something really powerful, something right at the heart of the Christian faith. This huge contrast between living under law and living in the freedom of Christ's finished work.
You know, the authors of our source material, Reverend Dr. Antonio Arnold and Sis Sheila Arnold, they point out a really widespread problem in a lot of churches, and that's spiritual bondage, the kind that's caused by, well, religious tradition.
So let me ask you this. Does your faith ever feel more like a chore, an obligation, than this amazing privilege? If it does, you're definitely not alone. And that feeling, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. Okay, let's get into it. So here's the problem. The big, modern misunderstanding. The source material argues that, honestly, many believers are just trapped. Trapped by this idea that they have to constantly work to earn God's favor, to earn their salvation. And this is at the very core of that misunderstanding. This belief that you've got to work to be saved. You know what this looks like, right? It's the feeling that things like ushering or singing in the choir or perfect church attendance, that those things are somehow required for your salvation. And according to the authors, this whole performance-based approach, well, it just misses the point entirely.
Okay, so to really get the solution, we've got to go back to the Old Covenant and the real purpose of the law. I'm talking about the Old Testament law, the Mosaic law. So many people get this twisted, so let's clear up what it was actually for.
So the law, the commandments given to Moses, were never meant to be the final destination. The source material, pulling from Galatians, makes it super clear. The law was never intended to save anyone. Think of it like a schoolmaster or maybe even a mirror. Its whole job was to show us our flaws, our shortcomings, to make us realize, wow, I can't do this on my own. I need a savior.
And this is where it gets really clear. Just look at this list of things the law cannot do. I mean, it's pretty staggering when you see it all laid out. The law couldn't justify you, couldn't free you from sin and death, couldn't bring righteousness. It was a fantastic diagnostic tool. It could point out the problem, sin, with perfect clarity. But it had absolutely zero power to cure it. It could show you what was wrong, but it couldn't make you right.
And that brings us to the New Covenant, to the game-changing solution, the concept of grace, all centered on the finished work of Christ on the cross.
So what is grace? Well, it's undeserved favor. It's this incredible kindness given to us through Jesus Christ. And here's the absolute most crucial part. It is freely given. It cannot be earned. It's a gift, not a wage you get for clocking in. And that idea right there, it flips the entire script on our relationship with God.
And when Jesus declared, "It is finished," wow. He wasn't just saying he was done, he was saying the law was fulfilled. He took all of its requirements and its curse right onto himself. And that single act, in that single moment, shifted everything. The whole system changed. Believers moved from being under all those obligations and curses of the law to living in the total freedom of grace. And this chart just lays out the difference so perfectly. Look at this. Law versus grace. Under the law, it was all about justified by works. It brought condemnation. It was a schoolmaster. It demanded obedience. It was all based on human effort, what you could do. But then you flip over to grace. Now it's justified by faith. It brings freedom. It's a finished work. It empowers service. And it's all based on Christ's sacrifice. See the shift? The focus goes from what you do to what Christ has already done. Okay, so if this grace thing is so freeing, why do so many of us still feel, well, trapped? Let's start debunking some of these myths, these religious obligations that keep people stuck in spiritual bondage.
All right, myth number 1. This is a big one. You must work in the church to be saved. This is probably one of the most common misconceptions out there. And you know what it leads to? Spiritual burnout. It creates a faith that feels like a never-ending performance review you're always about to fail. But listen to how the source material just flips this whole idea on its head. It says, as a Christian, you work because you are saved. It is not an obligation, and it's a privilege. See that? It completely changes the why. Service stops being this desperate attempt to earn salvation and instead becomes a joyful, grateful response to the salvation you already have. The motivation shifts from fear to just thankfulness.
Okay, here's another heavy one. Myth number 2. You must tithe in order to be blessed by God. This is that idea that giving is some kind of transaction, like you're paying God for blessings or paying him off to avoid curses. And again, the authors just reframe this so beautifully. They say, we give not to be blessed, but because we are blessed. The gift of Christ is free, so stop trying to pay him back. It's not a transaction, it's a reaction. It's an act of gratitude pouring out of the blessings you already have through grace. You just can't pay back a free gift.
All right, so this all sounds great, right? But what does it actually look like day to day? How do we take this freedom from religious obligation and apply it, in real life?
Well, the source makes a really key distinction we need to understand. It's the difference between the true church and a religious institution. See, the true church, that's not a building. It's the believers, the people who are the temple of God. It's guided by the spirit of the law and defined by things like love, joy, and peace, the fruit of the Spirit. A religious institution, on the other hand, can get caught up in being just a building, bound by the letter of the law, defined by strict rules, where service feels like an obligation. Huge difference.
So here are some really practical ways this mindset changes our actions. It's all about shifting your motivation. You start serving from love, not from fear. You give cheerfully, not because you feel forced to. You can finally rest in your faith, knowing your salvation is secure, instead of stressing about your weekly performance. And you forgive others freely, because you've been given this unearned grace yourself. It's a shift from I have to do this to I get to do this.
And that's really the ultimate takeaway here. Your relationship with God isn't based on your performance, your works, or how well you stick to tradition. It's based on grace, through faith. That's the liberating truth the authors are getting at. This freedom from spiritual bondage, it's not something you have to go out and earn. It's a gift that's already been given. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this question from the source material to think about. What old tradition, what burden, what rule, what is it that you can release today to more fully step into the finished work of Christ? What can you lay down to walk in the freedom that has already been so freely given to you? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.